to the Angela Foxworth Show right here on 108 Praise Radio. I am so excited to be here tonight. I have such an amazing guest, and I love the topic that we're going to be discussing tonight. So I'm very excited. I want to thank each and every person for always supporting each and every Monday night. We call it Monday Night Domination. So tonight I have the extraordinary author on the line with us from sunny Florida. Her name is Sandra Champlain, and she is the author of We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. And this is, an extremely interesting topic, number one, and just very thought provoking. So I want to thank you tonight, Sandra, for being on the line with me.
Hello, Angela. I'm thrilled to be here.
I'm so excited to have you and to discuss this book, but also to get into, the very serious topic of grief, which is definitely difficult for so many people to deal with. So I'm just excited to have you on. So listen, I'm going to get right into this because it's so meaty. That's what I call it. And I know a lot of people would like to, hear about it. First thing, we don't die. Okay, that's a question that probably is on every person's mind, at least at some particular point in their lives. And I would like you to kind of give us the history on what made you decide to write this book. What was your passion behind it?
Oh, I'll tell you. And Angela, sometimes I talk a little too much, so feel free to interrupt me if you need to.
You know what I say? This is a talk show talk. You're good, Sandra.
Sometimes I need to come up for air. Well, the story dates back into the mid-'90s, actually. I grew up a Catholic girl, spent every year of my life going to Catholic school, and, came from a religious family.
Mm-hmm.
And in the mid-'90s, I just developed a fear of dying. It was when you look up at the stars and you start thinking of the vastness of the universe and start asking those questions, who am I? Why am I here? All those deep questions. And for some reason, it developed into this incredible fear of death. And my mom speculates that I used to volunteer, and then my first job was in a nursing home, and many of the people I cared for passed away. So she seems to think like somehow that got into my subconscious. But anyways, it was such a severe fear of the unknown that I had trouble falling asleep at night. And it was really troubling. And so what I instinctively did was turn to my own religion and then studied many, many, many major world religions just to try to get rid of this fear. And of course, most of the religions on planet Earth do believe in an afterlife, but just having faith wasn't enough for me. I mean, I think, I was hoping it would be, but I thought, there's been human beings on this planet for many years and some really smart folks. I thought, somebody somewhere must have some real proof, like absolute, beyond faith, real proof that the afterlife exists. And so secretly, I started studying the world of the afterlife. And what I mean by that is, you hear about reincarnation. You hear about people that have had near-death experiences. You hear about mediums and psychics and the whole world of that sort of thing. And my book is called We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. And Angela, what I need people to know is, I just bring up mediums and psychics and things. I grew up in a family that was really anti that stuff.
Right.
And so, I believed whatever my parents said, and not that they were wrong by any means.
Right.
But, it was something like you have to see it to believe it. And, we always thought that people that believed in that kind of stuff, they were maybe believe, should be on a funny farm or something, I mean, that was that woo-woo world, that special New Age section in the bookstore, and I would laugh at people that would get so busy in their lives on these things, you know.
Yes.
I mean, like, you can't prove that stuff. So I was, even though I started, you know, searching into this, I stayed very, very, very secretive because I didn't want people to think I was one of those crazy woo-woo weirdos.
Right.
And I, you know, I never believed in this stuff. So, you know, I had a really hard time believing it was possible. But my fear of death really had me explore these things and more. I mean, there's even things like in hospices, and just before people pass away, they often see angels and their loved ones coming for them. And so I really got deep into this life of, you know, what's beyond life.
Yes.
And Angela, I kept it very secret because, again, you know, we human beings like people to like us. You know, I mean, that's a need to not have controversy and not have people think we're strange. So we always want to blend in, and, you know, we don't want fights and all that. So I honestly said, you know, I'm not going to tell anybody about what I found. But Angela, what I found made my fear go away.
Wow.
So if you want to fast forward now, so that was 1996 that happened.
Okay.
And let's fast forward to 2010, when I find out my dad's diagnosed with cancer, and it looks like his days are numbered. Okay. Now, mind you, I went from 1996 to, 2008, just really gathering this evidence on the afterlife, right?
Wow.
Again, never telling anybody because I thought people would think I'm a weirdo.
So you continued to actually study the craft of, you know, what you've learned and what you're writing about all during those years?
Not 100%, but certainly I learned a whole bunch of stuff. And my mind said, Sandra, you've got enough stuff in your head that you could write a book.
Wow.
But Angela, I tell you, I mean, I think you agree with me on this. We as human beings all have this little voice in our head. Yes. I call it the voice.
Yes.
Some people call it the inner critic. Some people call it negative Nancy. But we have this voice that is not so empowering. When we wake up in the morning and, you know, it's the one that hits the snooze button. It's the one that says, oh, I'm too big, or I have too much gray hair, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm unlovable. Like, we all have this negative voice that goes through our heads. And so mine was telling me, who am I to write a book? I'm nobody. Wow. You know, who's going to listen to me? And I had this fear of people thinking I was a weirdo, you know, one of these new agers. So, you know, it's all kind of like in the back of my mind is something I'll do someday, but certainly not now. Yes. And then when I found out my dad was diagnosed with cancer, and he was living in Daytona Beach at the time, it was really tough. I relocated from where I live in Massachusetts to be by his side for the last 5 months of his life. Wow. I'm the single kid, and at the time, my siblings were all married with family. And so, you know, I have a day job besides writing the book because I met you at my day job.
Right.
I'm a chef, and I travel with race car teams around the United States and Canada, and I cook for several hundred people.
Very good cook,
race car
by
drivers.
the way. Very good cook.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's where you and I met face to face, which I'm so grateful for. Yeah, but I had the kind of life that I was able to be with my dad as much as he needed me, bringing him to doctor's appointments, and I even moved in with him and his lady friend. And long story short, around the time of Dad's passing, the relationships with my siblings became very, very stressful. We started having these disagreements about Dad's care and what Dad wanted. And Angela, it was so strange because, you know, Dad told us all what he wanted. And it's like, well, why are we fighting about these things? This didn't make any sense. And then these rumors came around that Sandra said this and Sandra said that. And I'm thinking, I never said that stuff. Well, it created just these fights, this fighting within the family.
Wow.
And long story short, Dad passes away on May 11th, and the fight continued, the arguments continued, and you have to get, we were, we weren't the tightest of families, but certainly, we never thought we would be the siblings that would fight over the will, or, how you hear other people do that.
Yes.
I mean, never. Yeah, never would I think that would happen. And so I ended up not only losing my dad, but I also got written off by my siblings.
Oh, wow.
And not only losing them, but now losing the relationships with their children. And the story was out that I was, kind of like the greedy sister, right? After more of the money, and there's a lot of personal stuff. I won't get into it because it doesn't really matter. But it was all the stuff that wasn't real.
Yeah.
And I couldn't understand why we were fighting about these things that didn't happen. And I almost felt like I was being framed for something. It was just like, why me? Why am I getting it?
Exactly.
Because I was the one now that was by his side. So I hit an all-time depression low that I've ever hit in my entire life. I was, obviously extremely sad for losing my dad. I couldn't handle the pain of the fighting with my siblings, and I was not suicidal. I don't want you to think I was, or your listeners to think I was, but I hit such a dark place that I could understand where someone else who was in this state of depression would think that the easiest way would be to end their lives. Like I could really have sympathy or empathy, whatever the word is, for someone that low. And I didn't know how to pull myself out of it. And how we get these little thoughts, inspiration, messages, and I do believe in God, and I do believe that this is where this came from, but the message was to research grief.
Wow.
And so I started searching for not only why does it have to hurt so bad, but what would take normal, loving human beings and turn us all into these monsters. Because Angela, I had a level of anger that I've never experienced before in my life, and it hasn't come back. But it surfaced around the time of my dad's passing. And so I found this world of why human beings grieve, and I can talk about that if you like.
Yes.
And what causes these miscommunications and fighting. And I mean, it turns out to be brain chemicals of all things. And then ultimately, just to kind of sum up how this is going, the information that I found actually helped me personally feel better, have compassion and forgiveness for myself and my siblings, helped me get through grief. And just being a good Samaritan that I am, I decided all this information I found out about grief, I want to tell people about. So I created this free audio called How to Survive Grief. And I bought the domain name survivegrief.com. It's still there.
All right.
And I put on there this 70-minute audio. It's just me talking into the microphone about my experiences with grief, what it's all about, why we grieve, what we can do to go through the process faster, et cetera, and so forth. And I made a couple of posts on Facebook about it. Now, at the time, I only had maybe a couple of hundred friends on Facebook. And in a matter of 3 months, Angela, over 3,000 people had listened to that audio.
Wow.
And it went not viral, but it went pretty fast. And why this is important to me writing a book is people started emailing me that not only did it help ease their pain and give them understanding and help them in relationships, but Angela, they wrote me that they chose not to commit suicide because of that audio.
Yes.
And you get enough of those emails in, or I got enough of those emails in, that I actually felt the moral responsibility that if these words can save lives, I need to get them out as far as I can. So I did not think, and I still don't think, that most people who grieve go out to buy a book on grief.
Right.
And they just know they feel lousy, but they may
Yes.
not even recognize it's grief.
Exactly.
And I thought to myself, if I had the courage to write a book and title it "We Don't Die," and for the very first time have the courage to share why I believe life after death is real, not pushing it on anyone, but
Right.
just come along, follow me on my story. But then I strategically, Angela, put in chapter 10, which is the same words as that grief audio.
Wow.
Because like it or not, people, everybody's going to experience grief. And I don't want any more suicides.
Yes.
I don't want any other families coming apart. I want people to understand it and move through it. And then ultimately, the rest of the book is, if we don't die, who are we then? You know, we're human beings. We're souls having a human experience is what I believe. And so the rest of the book is how to have a powerful life while we're on earth, how to love, how to serve others, how to make a difference for others, how to forgive, and how to have the most soul growth while we're here. And fun, of course.
Well, you know what?
I think that gives you...
Yeah, I think number one, that's absolutely beautiful, Sandra, because, you've covered so much. First of all, I think we all have a natural curiosity about where we go. I don't know anybody that I don't know that at some point in time we think about that end, and especially as you get older, you think about, wow, am I going to make it past 70? And then, if I do, where am I going to go after this? I think for some people more than others, I'm like you. I have a natural curiosity for everything. And even in my, regular job, the one that I do 9 to 5 or whatever the case may be, my position is to root cause issues, get to the root of them so that we can resolve the problem. And I think that I tackled this subject. That's why the book, I was so drawn to wanting to read it and understand, everything about it, because it truly is one of those things where it kind of opens your eyes to, wonder about some of the questions that you've probably had all of your life. I just have never been a face value person, even in my own, belief. When I would get the Bible, and I know people have their, where they want to debate you on every ins and outs, but one of the most fundamental things that I think that I get out of what the word is study to show yourself approved, so that you can have the knowledge that you need. So I don't just take, metaphors or some stories without, studying them through and really understanding what those translations meant and what those interpretations are. And death is one of those things that is kind of like a taboo, even in the church. No one really wants to talk about it, but so many people have questions about it. And it's so funny when you mentioned about, being the new wave person and, about, the psychics, because I was raised that it was demonic. So I was always told we could not go see a psychic, or we couldn't use a medium, because it was, if they, in the Bible, it said that if they gain profit off of what they're doing, then it was of the devil, and different things like that. But we have the gift of prophecy on the inside of all of us. It's just some people recognize it more, some people operate in it more than others. And if you really get in tune to your spirit man, which does take a lot of layers that would have to be peeled off, then you really will be able to understand and be free. And one of the things too that I loved what you said was that, when you got to a point in your life where you were broken, like everything seemed to have come at you at one time, your father passing, the issues that you were having with your family, feeling isolated. Sometimes, and I believe this with all my heart, sometimes it takes that major isolation in your life to be so broken and transparent that you have nothing but faith on the inside of you to lift you up. It's almost like you have nowhere else to go. And at that critical time, I believe is when God uses you the most, because when you're that vulnerable, it's like accepting information like a child. You know what I mean? You start getting all of these things in your spirit. You start really hearing on the inside of yourself and really understanding what your purpose is. And this from that point, look at what it has birthed. You're again being able to be a light to people that are just walking in darkness. I've been around people who are just existing right now. They're not even living. To even smile is a luxury, you know?
Right.
So I just love that you have this book that talks about all of this. And it is
Yeah.
very
And
important.
I want to just give your listeners a gift. I know that in the time we have, I'm not going to be able to go through all the reasons I believe in life after death. But if your listeners want to read a copy of my book for free, they can go. I started a radio show podcast
Awesome.
on
Awesome.
iTunes and YouTube, but the site is
Okay.
wedon'tdieradio.com.
All right.
And if they go there, there's a button that says join the Insiders Club. Now, I don't send you spam and a lot of emails. You get very few. But it says read the first chapter of the book. Well, Angela, the truth is the whole book is there.
Yes, that's awesome.
Because there's some people that, like I said, I'm not out to sell the book. I'm out to change people's lives, give people hope, and help empower people living a good life. So just for your listeners, wedon'tdieradio.com, and then click the Insiders Club. And besides the information that I have in my book, now my book's currently 4 years old. In the last 4 years, I've gained a whole bunch more evidence. And my radio show, I have 150 hours worth of conversations with doctors and scientists and religious folks and people who've had near-death experiences and some of these psychics and people on my show. So, I mean, there's some really good, great, I call it evidence. In a court of law, would it hold up as evidence? I don't know. But does it change your life? Yes, it does.
Amen.
That's what I call evidence. So anyways, that's the gift that I want to give to your listeners.
And we thank you so much. And I'm going to have you repeat that before, we get off of the line.
Sure.
So here's my question for you. When you're talking about, just the different religions that you've looked at and the evidence, what is it? Are there any major things or bullet points that you can let our audience know tonight that are evidence that there is life after death?
Sure. I can just give some of my personal things, that have happened to me.
Okay.
One of the first ones is I got to back up because I wanted to say this earlier when you were chatting about us all being spirits or souls.
Mm-hmm.
Years and years ago, you see animals having these have instinct, right?
Yes.
So animals have instinct, and it's been said that us human beings have a lot of dormant instincts. But now we've got our cell phones and our computers and whatnot,
yes.
So we don't utilize some of these instinctual things we have. And I don't know if you've had this with anybody, Angela, but my mom and I sometimes call each other at the exact same time,
yes.
or
yes.
we say the same thing. And how is it we're thinking about the same exact thing at the same time?
Exactly.
Right? And she and I were just talking about this yesterday. She's like, how does that happen, Sandra? Well, I do believe that whether we are in heaven or if we are on earth, we are souls. So, we just have a body while we're here, and we lose that when we cross over or transition or pass away, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
But we are still those souls, and the way we can pick up on other people's thoughts, or it is that we are these souls. I mean, we have that, and we aren't really trained to use it, but it's in there.
Yes.
So what I did is I had gone to see a medium do a stage show with a girlfriend of mine a number of years ago. And of course, my skeptic mind says, oh, yeah, they're plants in the audience. This medium's not going to know anything about anybody. She's going to try to sell us her book. Like there's got to be a scam behind it, is how I always felt. Well, she gave such pure readings to people in front of a group of maybe 800 people. And I was just shocked, really specific. Wow. Not just, your mom's here and she loves you, but I mean, really specific things. And so I looked up this medium, and her name's Doreen Virtue. She was a psychologist, and she got into the world of being a medium and learning about angels and things like that. Well, Angela, she offered a course in California about mediumship, a 3-day course. And she says, if you come to this course, I can teach you to be a medium. And now the time that I was finding out about this, you got to know that my fear level was still at 99%. Fear of dying was still so high. And I, thought, gosh, if I could go to this course, I don't believe it's possible, but on that 1% chance that it is possible, I gotta find out. So I spent more money than I should have and took this weekend course out in California. And just quickly, the very first bit of instruction she gave us is she says, I want to tell you, she told us a lot about heaven, and in a little while I can tell you where heaven is, because I think that's pretty cool. It's not in the clouds. But anyway, so she says, once we get into doing this mediumship, I want to tell you how it's done. So she says, let's just do a little experiment. We're not really doing it. But she says, everybody's got an imagination, right? She says, I want everybody to take a partner, somebody you don't know. And she says, I want you to sit face to face. Because, it's her theory that we all have this ability to connect with our loved ones. Okay, all right, great.
Okay.
Because we're just souls now connecting with other souls. So she says, I want you to close your eyes, and one of you go first. And she says, I want you to pretend that there is a person standing behind your partner. And just make up a story. Is it a man? Is it a woman? Would it be a grandparent? On what side of the family? Did this person have a name? What did they do for work? What did they die of? Is there any message that they want to give to this person? So Angela, she said, we're not going to really be mediums right now, but I want you to just know how this is done. So I want you to pretend and imagine that there's someone there. So, that's easy enough, right? We can all imagine and make up somebody. So with my eyes closed, I tell this woman, so I imagine that there's a man behind you. It would be your grandfather on your mother's side. I'm just making this up. I said, I see a man, I see a fishing boat, so he's a fisherman. I see a cigarette, so I'm guessing he died of lung cancer. Oh, I'm hearing the name Jan, and he's from Denmark, right? Just making it up. He's got a big gap between his front teeth and sandy blonde hair. And I said, and the message would be that he never told your mother that he loved her while he was on earth, and he wants you to tell your mom that he loves her. So I opened my eyes, Angela, like, okay, lady, it's your turn to go next. And the woman's crying. Her grandfather on her mother's side is named Jan. He died of lung cancer. He worked in Denmark as a fisherman, fit the description, and she had heard stories from her mother that, her father never hugged her and never said, I love you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so what were you thinking at that moment?
I've got goosebumps again because it's a pretty big deal. Well, so certainly if mediumship is real, okay, why could I do it? I'm no special person with no special gift. And I mean, it excited me and was like, it didn't scare me, but I thought it was just like the rug was pulled out from underneath me, like, really? And so this woman turned to me, told me my grandfather's name was John. He had a German Shepherd. He had a limp. He walked with a cane. And, all of that information was correct. He didn't have a limp, but he, was bow-legged. And I thought, wow. And the thing is what this woman told us is if we thought that we were really doing a medium reading, what would have been present would be fear. Like, oh, we would have all gone, no, I can't do this. I can't do this. But because she said we could use our imagination, and any time we have any of these things that happen with our mind, like, a lot of people have dreams of their loved one coming in, or we're, in the bathtub or the shower or driving or whatever. When your mind is quiet and you can use your imagination, that's the easiest way for this kind of communication to happen.
Wow. And
it really told me, because, you tell me I can invent somebody in my imagination. Well, I got a great imagination. Exactly. And now I wish I could tell you, Angela, that I was successful every time I did this with people. But no, sometimes it really was my imagination. But I was right enough of the time.
Right.
To realize that there's something else there. Well, I kept digging, and one of the ladies, her name is Reverend Rita Berkowitz, who I met in my travels, and she's something called a spirit artist. And what she does is not only do a medium reading on someone, is she's an artist. She'll draw a picture of the person who's talking to her.
Oh, wow.
And so after my dad passed away, even though I believed in life after death, this woman's here in Massachusetts where I live, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to go see her. And I tell you, when I walked in, first thing she told me is she says, oh, you got a little grandmother here. And I said, well, about how big? She says, oh, about my height. And Grammy was about 5 foot, 5'1". And she described my grandmother, and she's just telling me these things. She did not want me to give her any information as proof that, she's not digging for information on me. Because a lot of times people think that about mediums. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because I think there's frauds in every industry. But she pulls out her notepad there and all her colored pencils. And she says, well, Dad's here, real matter of fact. And she says, and Dad wants you to know that he's really proud of you. That's pretty generic, but okay. So she says, he wants me to tell you that he first felt the pain in his back. I think he said November. Okay. Wow. And then she says, and then she described the tumor that was in his spine. And she described just what my dad had gone through. He went into a nursing home for a while to manage the pain. He went to the hospital. And she was just real matter of fact. And then she says, your dad, this is how he would get out of the chair. Because Dad had one of these, they called it a turtle shell, because his spine had been broken. Okay. So he had a real interesting way of leaning himself over and putting his hands behind him on a chair to push himself up. Yeah, this is how he got out of the chair. And she totally describes how Dad would say his pain felt tight and pointed to exactly where my dad would point to. And I mean, my jaw is dropped. Well, then the whole time she's telling me this, she's drawing a picture. So she drew Dad's brown eyes first. And Angela, she drew a picture of my dad that looked like pictures I had seen of him when he was in the Air Force, when he was in his 20s. Now, I mean, she could draw anybody in the world, and she drew somebody that looked like that after telling me this story about Dad. And I said, well, that's not what he looked like when he died. And she says, oh, no. She says, when we cross over, we pick our best age. And not only that, if we wore glasses, there's no glasses. If we were missing a leg, we'd have 2 legs. If we had a problem with our any diseases of our body or, overweight or whatever that may be, we are of perfect health.
That's awesome.
When we get to heaven. And, and that's something that really hit me as fantastic. And of course, there's a lot of stories of people that have had near-death experiences. And, a lot of people say, oh, well, that's just the brain shutting down. And, that's just what happens. And, well, I'm sorry. There's a doctor named Dr. Kenneth Ring, who did a study of near-death experiences of people that were blind. They've never had vision in their life. And Angela, in those moments that their brain flatlined, if that's what you want to call it, he got their stories, and people could, yes, they rose above their bodies, but they could see for the very first time in their life things. For instance, one lady saw her husband having a conversation with the doctor. The doctor dropped his pen. The husband picked it up and noticed that the doctor had one purple sock on and one green sock on, but very detailed. And now her mind, her consciousness, her body is lying on an operating table. And meanwhile, her consciousness is seeing colors and seeing these things. And he studied several dozen people, like I said, blind.
Yes.
So there's this, the skeptical mind, I feel, wants to come up with a reason to not believe in any of this. And I get it, because I used to have one of those minds. But the stories are out there, the information's out there. And if anybody's interested in it, I'll share it all freely with you. But, if we take the time to really, really look, there's plenty of evidence that we go on. There's a lot of other things I could talk about, but those are some of the best. Really some of the best. I interviewed a lady that on my own radio show. Her name is Sandy Ingham in the UK, and she's got a fascinating story about doing this artwork. She says, I've never had any artistic ability in my life, and she started to just doodle while she was watching TV with her husband. And, she thought she was falling asleep. Well, he happened to notice that her hand was still moving. And, she started drawing faces of people. And, she really didn't have too much belief in anything. But she went to see a medium do a stage show because she thought, maybe she'd ask him about these pictures she's drawing. And lo and behold, as he would talk to somebody in the audience about their deceased loved one, she was drawing a picture of the exact same person as they lived. Crazy stuff like that.
Wow. I have a question for you too. With all of the studies that you've done, that one of the we have all of these controversial things. So heaven and hell, do you believe in both?
Well, the truth is, I believe in heaven. And this is me. I'm not going to push this on anybody, but I think there's enough hell right here on planet Earth.
Okay. Yes. No, and I understand exactly what you're saying. Yes.
Yeah.
So sometimes
and
I know
I'm
that.
Not. Oh, sorry.
No. You go right. I was going to say sometimes people have stated, that study, deep. They say we're living in the perpetual hell.
Yes. Amen to that, sister.
Yes.
I have talked to enough people that have had these near-death experiences, and some of them are, scientists, doctors, really rational people. Many atheists who haven't believed in anything have had these experiences. And the common denominator is when they say our life flashes before our eyes. We have what's called a life review. A lot of people have heard that.
Yes, I have.
And we see the impact we've had on other people from their experience, from somebody else's experience. So if we hurt somebody, we are going to actually feel the pain that we caused the other person.
Wow.
So we go through a series of this life review, seeing the impact we've had on others. And then the flip side of that, Angela, is we see the good that we've done for others also. So when your day comes, it is very possible that you see the listeners of this radio show, how their lives have been touched and transformed by your words, by your guests' words. And then you actually see the ripple effect of how they were able to live their life and serve other people, and you were the start of it all. So, really great stuff. But why I bring this up is because everybody's got the same story, but they say there's no one saying heaven for you, hell for you. Right. They said there is a God, and depending on what our upbringing is, it appears as different beings. Even atheists will see a light, and they'll know that that's God. Okay. But the judgment is how we judge ourselves.
That's good.
And
That's good.
many of them say, especially people that maybe have believed in hell, we can be very hard on ourselves and not forgive ourselves.
Right.
But we have the angels around that and our loved ones, of course, are there to meet us when our time comes, which I find really great.
Yes.
But that will keep us on the course to teach us how to forgive ourselves. And so I think that's really great. And so I try to live my life, and I'm a human being. I am certainly not perfect.
Right.
And there are times, and I'm embarrassed to admit this, but sometimes my mind tells me it's easier to tell a fib than telling the truth.
Of course.
And because I'm human. Now, in that
Yes.
moment, because I now believe all this, I say, okay, Sandra, if you're going to have to relive this experience,
right. That's
why
good.
don't you just tell the truth now?
The first time. Get it over with, good or bad. That is good. That is good. And with all of your studies, let me ask you another question. Reincarnation.
Sure.
A lot of people, ask about that, but I, based on studies that I've done, I do believe it's real.
Yeah, there are two schools of thought that I like. Okay, one of them, I tend to like the idea of reincarnation because we all recycle these days, right? We reuse
energy
things.
Never dies.
Why would a soul, especially like a child, comes into this earth and has a couple months to live and dies of a disease? That's the only shot they get.
Yeah.
I would think there's a system there,
Yes,
like I say,
I believe that.
But
yes.
now I don't know. And a lot of people also feel that when people tell these stories of reincarnation, I mean, there's a doctor named Ian Stevenson who's now deceased, but he's written many books. He studied over 3,000 stories of children who claimed to live a past life. Now, a little kid wouldn't know any better, wouldn't have studied any other thing.
Exactly.
But I mean, there's been children that have spoken different languages, like a Native American child. I don't even know how old he was, 4 years old, knew the French language and said that he grew up on the river Seine or whatever the river is over there. And he was an artist named such and such. Now, how does that happen?
Wow.
So there's some people though that believe that with our psychic ability that maybe that little kid was tapping into like doing the medium thing on a soul of somebody who's departed. I have no idea.
Right.
But I mean, just even having this, like I tend to like the idea of reincarnation.
Yeah.
But if something like that happens, I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Do we have enough time just so I can tell where I believe heaven is, by the way?
Yes, I would love for you to. And I want to say real quick that is just how amazing, just life and this world and everything. It's so big. There's so many layers. We have light years and years and, the stars and the moon and the sun. And there's just so many mysteries of this world. And I think that is what makes it so beautiful because you really don't know. Everything you're doing is truly, what you're created to feel and, and the energy that you put towards wanting to find the truth,
Yeah, and why do I have this passion? It's to help people live a better life. Help myself have a better life. I bet you agree with this. Every time you're done with one of these radio interviews, do you feel better?
I do.
And happier than before?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I can come in so heavy and just have so many things on my mind. And the minute we delve in, it's almost like magic. You get on the microphone and you hear this amazing story, and like I'm just feeling your energy, and it's so positive and it's so beautiful, and it just revives you. You get energy. You feel like you can accomplish anything, and every bad thought that I was having or negativity that was on me, it has truly been released just as we've been conversing. And I feel bad because we haven't even broke for a commercial, but that's okay because it's been such a meaty topic. I haven't wanted to stop, so I love this.
Thank you for that.
Absolutely love it.
But I agree. Every conversation I have with my guests, I want to make sure I'm inspired,
Yes.
that I'm ready to have a better day, that I can forgive myself for things. When, you know, the thing is, Angela, I do believe we are souls having a human experience.
Amen.
I believe
Yes.
planet Earth is the juiciest place for us to feel
Yes.
emotions.
Yes.
And, you know, we have all these different players in life. We've got a body that
Yes.
can sense things. You know, I tell a story in the beginning of my book, like, what if heaven is this wonderful place and all the time it's all the best, all the most miraculous, wonderful things? Well, you know, after a while that gets pretty boring, right? Because you can't really feel good unless you know what bad is.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You don't really know how great joy is if you haven't felt sorrow. So we decide, and this is me being playful, that we get to come to this great place called planet Earth where you get all these great emotions and things you have to deal with. But the thing is, you know, the agreement we have is if we go to this Earth place, we're going to forget who we really are.
Yeah.
You know, and this is something that empowers me. Is there truth behind it? I don't know, but anything I can do to empower myself and others,
That's right.
that's what I do. So I pretend it's the truth.
Well,
so coming here, though, we forget who we are. But I want to just say something back to the where is heaven.
Yes.
When these mediums and psychics and people can tune into all this energy, it's said that energy is all around us.
That's right.
All the time. Even if you look at your hand in front of your face, if you put out your hand right now, we human beings are made up of molecules.
That's
and inside the molecules, there's atoms. And inside the atoms, there's energy bouncing around. And if such thing existed, Angela, as a teeny tiny camera to put inside one of the atoms that make up our skin and bones and everything we see, it would not be able to film anything because we are made up of invisible energy.
That's right, and energy never dies.
It's hard to fathom this because this is a whole world of quantum physics, quantum mechanics. But everything you can see is energy. Yes. Everything you can see and touch and smell and hear is all energy, and science has proven this.
That's right.
And the thing is there is energy that exists that we cannot see with our human eyes. We can't hear it with our ears, but it exists.
That's
and
right.
For instance, how many of us have a smartphone, right?
Yes. Now,
you don't need it plugged into the wall to talk to somebody halfway across the world anymore.
That's right.
It is sending out invisible signals. We have television signals bouncing around us. We have the wireless internet bouncing around us. I mean, there is this invisible world of energy happening. I say that heaven is, I like the term hereafter because
Amen.
I say it's all around you right now. I say it's like a dimension that we can't see, like
That's
I said,
right.
with our eyes, but
That's
we can
right.
certainly sense it. And it's around each one of us. And I would bet my life on this, that our loved ones are around us right now. I think heaven is a place that, yes, there's more learning to be done.
Amen.
But, you know, your loved ones are just a thought away. I think, you know, people are looking over us. I mean, you still have your privacy, of course, but,
yes.
you know, you're not alone. We really
yes.
aren't. And, you know, you think of, like, if a log burns up, it turns into fire and then heat, right?
Yes.
So why can't, when our body itself dies, you know, our soul, our spirit, you know, that just still stays in that place? Energy cannot be destroyed.
That's
this
right.
is proven through science.
Right.
It cannot.
It never
dies.
And
for me, if our phones can, like, I got your text advertising this show, and I got it in probably a second from when you sent it. If my cell phone is smart enough to pick up that signal, why can't we, as souls having a human experience, pick up messages, you know, from the thoughts of our loved ones that have passed on? I really, you know, with my years of studies and hours of conversations with people, Angela, I've gone from having a faith in the hereafter to a knowing that it's real.
Amen.
And
Amen.
in that, our lives are for us to, have as much growth we can for our souls.
Yes.
And I'm sorry to say this because this is painful to hear, but most of the growth we get is through our suffering.
Yeah.
The biggest turnarounds for our life, the biggest times, we can serve and help other people, it's because we've been there ourselves.
Yes.
The biggest gift you can be is to help a fellow human being in whatever way that may be.
Yeah.
To learn to love, learn to forgive. So many times we're afraid in life, we're afraid of death. Well, death is just an illusion. We don't die. We're afraid of failure. Well, if life is about soul growth, there is really no failure.
That's right.
You try something that doesn't work, you learn.
Yes.
And then the other fear we have as human beings is the fear of being alone. And whether we believe it or not, and maybe we don't have any proof with our eyes, but if we can all believe that our loved ones are around us, that we've lost, that we have a team. A lot of people call them guardian angels or spirit guides that are invisibly working behind the scenes. You just need to talk to them and ask. They don't interfere unless you ask,
Amen.
For some help. But we're never alone, Angela, never.
I truly believe that. I truly, truly believe that. And even from when you were saying earlier about, from a scientific perspective, and we talk about, the basic, I think what is the cell is the basic building block for a human, right?
Yes.
And then you have, and it's been a long time, so I'm a little rusty about school, but I know that you have something like, your proton and your neutron, right? And what I think about all the time is in life, there are ups and there are downs. There's positives and there are negatives. Well, in order for energy to just continue, it always has a positive and a negative. That's what keeps that charge. So I look at life just like that. When we go through those trying times and when we are hit with suffering, you're the most vulnerable. That's when you can, plug in and that positive activates from that negative, and that's where you get all of this, super just super energy that it will allow you to be able to bless someone else. It's at your time of suffering that you take all your guards down, because at that point you're so hurt and you're so vulnerable. You can be used. A lot of times we walk with our facades, and we do what is supposed to be the best thing to do. We live our lives status quo as not to offend anybody or hurt anybody or whatever the case may be. When you're suffering and you're going through it, at that point, that pain is so magnified and it's so real. You're just vulnerable. You're just, at that point, it's like, God, use me however you want to use me, because you just don't want anybody to have to go through the things that you go through. What ends up happening, and this is just me, Angela, I just feel like once you've mastered that or got through it, it gives you this increased faith. It gives you this increased strength. And when someone comes along and they're feeling just like you used to feel, you have this power to encourage them not to give up because you got through it. And it makes you stronger and stronger every time. Even in the midst, I'm going through one of these things right now, and in my life, and I'm talking about, a couple of really tragic things, and literally I feel strengthened more so than I ever would have done before. Not that I don't cry, not that I haven't broken down, but I tell you,
You're human.
Yes, each time you go through it, though, you just get more and more strengthened. And it reminds me, I remember when I hit this, something similar to this years ago, and God got me through it, so He's not gonna stop now. And that's what you can encourage people with. So what you're doing is so, so important. And I can't even believe, we're almost at an hour, and it just seems like it's just not enough time to get through everything. But I want you to
Yeah.
leave our audience with a general word and then just tell them how they can tune into your show, how they can get your book, just everything, Sandra, as it relates to what you're doing, because people do need you. And, it is so important to allow them to be able to know that they're going to get through a lot of these dark times, and especially grief. When you lose someone, it is hard. And even though it's inevitable, we know it's going to happen eventually to all of us. It's a hard pill to swallow when you actually go through it.
Yeah, there's nothing worse. I don't think there's any worse pain for a human being than to have grief.
Yes.
It's losing a loved one, losing a child, losing a relationship. Even
Yes.
people that go through a divorce. I mean, grief kicks in there. I mean, there's so many times when we lose our finances that we experience grief. And if I can make somebody's road a little bit lighter, and the
Yes.
journey a little bit lighter. And Angela, I'm still getting the emails, people not committing suicide. So
Amen.
I'm really on a passionate path. So just one word to just leave people with is the word prayer.
Amen.
I have really been studying lately the power of prayer. And there have been healings, emotional, physical. Who's to say who gets a miracle healing and who doesn't? Because I know we all have to depart this sometime.
Yes.
But don't ever discount the power of prayer. And what's important is not the words you say, it's the intention behind them.
Amen.
I know I grew up not blasting the Catholic religion, but we had to memorize a bunch of prayers, and we just said them.
Yes.
We thought, we're saying our
Yes.
prayers, but we're not, because there's no feeling or passion
Yes.
behind them. You pray for something, you give it all you can. You pray for a person, you give it all you can, and you mean it. And I tell you, prayer and words are energy. And also those thoughts that go through your mind. I'm looking at the clock. One quick thing is, our thoughts are very, very powerful.
Yes.
Some people have done experiments with, you put a banana, here's something for you. Put a banana in one room, from the same bunch, a banana in another room. And one banana, you tell it, you love it, you cherish it, you nurture it, you say good things and good words. The other banana, you think bad thoughts, you say bad words. And at the end of a few days, Angela, the banana that you said the good things to will stay fresh. That other banana is going to have dark spots and turn bad faster. It's all has how powerful our energy is with thoughts. And, you don't have to believe me on this. Go do the banana test yourself, and you'll start thinking. You got to watch the words that you say to yourself in your head, watch the words you speak, and use prayer. And so how to get in touch with me, again, my name is Sandra Champlain. My book is available everywhere you buy books. It's called We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. If you want a free copy of my book, a PDF copy, and if you want to listen to my audio, How to Survive Grief, or listen to one of my great conversations, my radio station website, it's also my website, is WeDon'tDieRadio.com. Also, if anybody's interested, this coming September in Scottsdale, Arizona, I'm going to be speaking with a panel of 26 other afterlife people, many of them doctors and scientists and physicists, as well as mediums and people that specialize in end-of-life things. If you go to afterlifestudies.org, you can find out about that. It's inexpensive to go to, and it's the cutting-edge information about life after death being real. There's some things there that I'm shocked that they're working on, something called a soul phone, which I think, could you imagine the cell phone being able to contact your loved ones in the hereafter? I mean, there's some real stuff that's going on through science that people don't know about. And I'm here to say it's real. It's real.
That is awesome. I thank you so much for being on the show tonight. Just continue doing what you're doing. Definitely, I support it. And again, many blessings to you, Sandra. Thank you.
And you too, for the difference you make in so many lives, Angela. I really feel blessed to know you.
Thank you. I feel the same way. And listen, each and every Monday night, you tune in to the Angela Foxworth Show right here on 108 Praise Radio. Thank you so much to my audience tonight. We have had a wonderful show. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Remember, the Angela Foxworth Show, where knowing the truth really does matter. And you know me, I'm always interviewing with a purpose. You guys have a wonderful evening. Good night.